It's good to see some faces that I've seen on training courses before. So lovely that is. It's always nice to see faces that one recognises when one's giving a presentation. I've got a few slides which I will share with you. Let's see if that will work. Should be there now, hopefully. Excellent, lovely, jolly good. Well, Ledbury District is in the Hereford Guild, as David said. I'm having a problem with it moving on. Lovely, moving on now. We're not Hertfordshire, we're Herefordshire. We get a lot of confusion there. We're southwest of Birmingham, just across the border from Wales. And we are halfway between Hereford and Worcester, just to the west of the Malvern Hills, and it's a delightful part of the country. We're a very small district, and we've worked very hard over the years to help and support each other. We're very fortunate that there's only 9 miles between any of the towers, and with 8 towers altogether, we are a nice small group. On previous presentations, I've been asked immediately, what size are the towns and the villages? Ledbury is our main town with a population of 10,000 people thereabouts, and our smallest village has got 99 residents. So it's a large range of sizes of villages and towns, but it does give us a good basis upon which to draw people. In drawing up these statistics, it suddenly became obvious how we are going to have to work on getting some new recruits with the number of us that are over 70. But I suspect that often is the case across the whole of the country. So what is it that we've done that might be different? And I think this is all revolves around the realization that the ways we were doing things were not working and that we could actually change them. None of us are keen on change, and it's often difficult to promote, but it is something which we need to do from time to time. For me, what has come out of a lot of the recent presentations there have been about recovery and in discussions is that we need to look at what else is happening around us, the plans, the ideas and the practices. We need to take something, adapt it, improve it if you can, so that it works in your situation and your circumstances. And I will come back to this during the rest of this presentation, because I think it happens quite a lot. So I think we started about 10 years ago when our Guild Education Officer had organised a training event, which turned out to be Pip Penny's first new training course in England. It was a precursor to ITTS and ARC, which some of you will know quite a bit about. So 4 of us went on that district training course. And at the end of it, we realized that we could change things. Things could be done differently. So we arranged a meeting of the tower captains and a few other people who might be able to teach. And we had this meeting. All our meetings are held in the local British Legion Club, which means we've got a bar and we bring and share food, and that always helps along meetings and things. We looked at our numbers and it became obvious that although we were teaching a lot, or a fair number, we weren't retaining them and our numbers were dropping. And also that the potential for having very small numbers in 5 years' time was going to be very significant. We did a bit of speculation on how many people might move out of the district, give up, whose health was deteriorating, and we were going to lose a significant number. So we needed to decide what we were going to do. We came up with 4 things that we were going to do. We were all going to go and have some training as teachers to gain a bit of confidence, that we would all teach together, not alone, that we would create a handling process whereby we would be all working to the same goals and in similar ways, and that we were going to have really regular sessions with the new students 2 or 3 times a week. So the first thing that we did was we went off to Worcester Cathedral with their new teaching centre, because this was before art had got any of their courses really up and running. And Bernard Taylor organised a day for us on their dumbbells. And we had a really good session of working out how we learnt to ring, how we taught, and experimenting on each other. Since then, I think everybody who was on that day has been on an art course, both modules 1 and 2. The thing that we have also done is we are now always teach together. Very rarely is there one person, one student being taught. And this leads to a great community between the students and a great support for each of the helpers. So I would always recommend that. We devised how we were going to teach and the order we were going to teach things in. This was all at the same sort of time that ITTS was coming online. So some of it is very much on that line, but we had to build a lot of it for ourselves and work out how we were going to do it. This has meant that everybody is working to the same basic process, because one of the important things is that not one person teaches one student. We're always looking at moving between each other, moving between bells, and moving between towers in our practices. We used to have regular sessions 2 or 3 times a week, which meant that people were learning very, very much quicker and they weren't forgetting so much. Those were really useful things to do. And as they progressed, so we would move them on to computers, running a simulator more often than not, with headphones on, because we can then have more than one person in the tower ringing on their own. I'm going to come back to the approach that I was talking about earlier, and that a good idea, you take it, adapt it, improve it to suit our situation. So what we'd seen from Penny and Bernard Taylor, we adapted slightly and came up with a process which suited us. But the interesting thing is that I gave a talk to the Art AGM one year, and that was just before Birmingham were looking at what they could do. And they realized that they could do things differently. And it was out of that that they developed the Birmingham School of Ringing. So again, an idea has been taken, adapted and improved. With our way of working things, we've made some great strides. We've got quite a lot of new learners, but our practices have come to a bit of a plateau. So we needed something better that was going to help extend not only our new ringers, but also our existing ones, so that they made some progress. And it was from that that we took Birmingham's idea and tried to find a way that we could adapt it locally. We certainly didn't have the resources to run a Birmingham. We can, just about manage to run our own practices. So I've come back again to this idea. We've taken something, we adapt it. And we came up with something called our District Practice Week. And in that week, in the first week of the month, we cancel all our district practices. And we've replaced them with staged levels on the nice easy bells in the district. We limit the number of learners. We get enough support, helpers to support that group. And then that gives them 3 weeks to go away and practice what they've learned and come back, hopefully, to move on a little bit further. That was the spreadsheet we had, which was a bit of a nightmare in the early days of trying to set up the whole system, because we had around about 45 people or thereabouts to cater for. We had several different practices throughout the week, and there were one day, two, one during the day and one in the evening. Having quite a lot of retired people in the area, this was quite possible and quite useful. The number of helpers we had, which was always to our advantage, we did have the whole of that large pink area on the right-hand side at the top were our helpers, and each of the other columns were the different types and different levels. We did use some of the people who were at plain bob minor level or a little bit above. We would start using them as helpers, but we did need to make sure that these people could ring competently in whatever they were going to be able to do without falling off the line. Because it's really important that the helpers don't make mistakes, other than that we all often make mistakes at the end of an hour and a half of plain bob doubles, but that happens. So just to go back to what we were doing, we'd cancel all the practices in 1 week. We didn't have any significant opposition to that. All of the towns that were involved were happy to do that, to give it a go and see how it went. We had 1 or 2 individuals who were a little bit peeved because they weren't going to necessarily get a practice on their own practice night. It might have to be another evening during the week. Everybody was invited so that we only had the right number, and we also made sure that they confirmed their attendance. We had a maximum of 5 students at any one time. Any more than that, people don't get enough of a ring during the course of the evening. We had an art accredited teacher as the leader, and we would always try and have at least 5 or 6 helpers. Sometimes we've managed 6 or 7, but the whole process did stretch our helpers to the limit. Some people were even doing 5 sessions a week. So we would always have only 1 student at a time, because when they're only having a small amount of ringing, you didn't want one learner firing it up for the other one. So we only put 1 in at a time. We'd always have somebody who would stand by them. Often that person would just go through before their touch what they were going to do and the things they needed to think about, and then they'd have a little session afterwards and work out what had gone really well and what needed to be done for the next session that they were going to do. And there is no time wasted sitting around chatting. It was straight on 1 session of ringing into the next. And in fact, we had 2 members of the district who had taken their Module 2 courses, and they actually did their development and got their accreditations through running these sessions. And it's really interesting to look back on their plans and see how well structured it all was. And we were very much looking at their strengths and weaknesses and building on those things for them. Hour and a half of this continuous ringing was really hard work for the helpers, but it really did show up how things have improved week on week because people were moving forward. After about 12 months, we had a review of where we were getting to, and it was most of the students really did enjoy it. One or two were struggling a little bit by the process, so we had to look at how we might sort things out for them on an individual basis. But it was noticeable how we'd moved the whole of the district forward a certain amount. And we were finding that we were having less people in the lower levels and more people in the higher levels. So we had to try and find a way around that. And we managed to do that by having extra practices. We had later in the month, we'd have a Friday evening practice, which was 7 and 8 bell ringing using lighter bells, because the main one had been on Ledbury bells, which were 20 hundredweight 8. So they were a little bit difficult for some people to practice on. We also found a way of helping or saying thank you to the helpers by having a surprise major practice once a month. And also that we would have a Saturday morning with those people who were just bouncing above the level of plain Bob minor and looking at things like Little Bob. And all of that was working really well until lockdown. So we've tried to keep going through lockdown with ringing room and Zoom social events. And now that we're opening up slowly, we're looking that we will use this district practice week again, starting really on a very basic process, so that people can come along and just get their feet under the table again with plain hunt and plain Bob doubles and build it on from then. One thing that we're looking at is to go for some lapsed ringers. I've actually had 2 who've said that they will come back and help us out, which is really great. We're going to have a major recruitment drive because we've noticed that the number of learners we've got has actually diminished slightly, and we need to pick that up. And the other thing that we're going to go for in Ledbury itself is to have a youth group. And how will we do this? Well, I go back to this same idea. We're going to look around and see how other people are doing those particular aspects, particularly the youth look. We won't be able to do it the same way as they are, so we're going to take it, adapt it, probably can't necessarily improve it, and see what we can do to fit in with our local situation. Other things that I would suggest anybody who's looking at anything and trying to get something new is start on a small way. You won't convince everybody that you need to do these things. So it might just be that 2 or 3 people from a tower go and do something extra. It might be just a couple of towers get together and sort something out for themselves in the way of a small cluster. Don't be afraid to ask for help. There's a lot of ringers out there who are more than happy to help, but they probably just need to be asked, as they may not know where the assistance is needed. Look at how it's going. If things aren't working the right way, try and adapt it. And don't keep going because you have made a change and you feel you've got to justify it. If it isn't working, adapt it and try and find a better way of doing it. And the other thing which I was a little bit concerned about right at the beginning of this was, what did we do with those people who didn't want to join in? Well, you just have to work without them. I don't say you ignore them, but you just go on and leave them to carry on in their own way. So always trying to find ways of moving forward. And the most important thing is to have some fun. If you're having fun, things will succeed. Lovely. Well, I'm very happy to answer some questions. I'll now try and find a way of